bridge collapsed. The mountain road washed out. All the signs are obscured by fog. Your only directions are detours. Eventually it dawns on you. Sometimes you need to get lost to discover where you're supposed to be. Welcome to Merlin's Barn.
Hello and welcome to Merlin's Barn, broadcasting to you as usual from Fort Blanket, south of the Yukon. And tonight you have me, Merlin, and we have with us
Randy Gaulke.
And Randy Gaulke is a friend of mine going back, about 25 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably about 25 years. We met doing World War I reenacting. And as you've probably heard me say a few times in the past, this is not a reenacting podcast. That's a culture to itself. That has its own different podcasts, so we're not going to discuss 25 years of shooting blanks at each other on a battlefield, but we're going to discuss tonight what Randy does, which is leads battlefield. He's a battlefield guide on the Western Front in Europe, and we're going to discuss Western Front tours and World War I and how Randy got into this. Ready to go, Randy?
Sure. World War II also.
Oh, yes, World War II. See, in my mind, I edited out the World War II because when we did, a few of us had the opportunity to go on one of these tours with Randy in 2005. And it was amazing. We followed the 8th Cuirassier Cavalry Regiment from Cologne, Germany, through to where they fought in Verdun. But it was extremely World War I, and every now and then the guys would a couple folks would get going off on World War II, and we were trying to stay focused on World War I the entire time. I think we tormented you at one point.
It wasn't too bad though.
Okay, good. It was
a good torment.
I remember we found some World War II site, and we're just obsessing over it for a bit, even though we had no clue what it was.
I think we were by the bridge at Remagen at one point.
Oh yeah, we did, and you specifically took us there. So
Yep.
That's a good point made. So the first thing, what we're going to start off with, this is, people, we're broadcasting from just south of Gettysburg. And I think most people in the U.S. are, they go to Gettysburg, they go to maybe Revolutionary War sites. World War I is something entirely different because it didn't happen here. But I think the first thing is, what got you interested in World War I to start with?
So without killing the crowd by talking too much, I played military strategy games and role-playing games, and I had the benefit of growing up just south of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, where D&D was started. And one of the games that I got at a convention up there was called Fight in the Skies, which was a World War I air combat game created by a friend of mine named Mike Carr. And it was Fight in the Skies that got me interested and hooked on World War I aviation initially. That was 1980. Fast forward to 85, 86, I had a Fulbright scholarship. I studied German and business at the University of Hamburg for a year in Hamburg, Germany. And I took my first battlefield tour at that time with Lieutenant Colonel Graham Parker of Flanders Tours.
And who's that?
So he died, unfortunately, a few years ago. But he was a British lieutenant colonel. He had the benefit of working at SHAPE headquarters in Mons, Belgium. And so right in the heart of the battlefields. And so he started leading battlefield tours. And he did that for several years. And so 86, I took my first one. It was a weekend one day on the Somme and one day at Ypres, Belgium, and really got me hooked. He told me about a group called the Western Front Association. And it was people that I met through the Western Front Association, most notably Christina Holstein, who at that time was their European coordinator. And Merlin, you met Christina. She guided part of that tour.
I was going to say, I remember her from going into, was it Heli Ravine?
Heli Ravine and Fort Douaumont.
Yeah, yep. Fort Heli Ravine, following where the Cuirassier, because Cuirassier were down in that valley.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's where my little Rusty Bits box is.
And that really impacted you. I remember you and Andy Breeden were really hit by Heli Ravine.
And part of it was... And to give some background on this, when we went on this tour, Randy made the point of taking us to places that the Cuirassier had been formed, where they'd been, and we went down into this ravine that's deep in so that's deep in Verdun. And how many acres is Verdun?
Oh, the whole battlefield? I couldn't tell you the.
We're talking thousands, though.
Yeah, the width of the battlefield is probably 10 miles, 10 to 15 miles
Yeah.
wide.
So, and then you figure how many millions of artillery shells did we fire in World War One?
Yeah.
So you're deep out in these areas, and there's a ton of unexploded ordnance. And I think the things that affected us the most were the amount of unexploded ordnance there. I remember specifically Christina. I think it was the last piece that pushed Andy over the edge. Was I was walking along the hillside, and there was I went to step down, and I luckily had just grabbed a tree branch, and there was a unexploded French grenade with a wooden handle right where I was about to step. And Christina was all excited, going, "Oh, that's a 1914 French such and such," and Andy's just going, "It's an unexploded grenade." But I think the thing we pulled out of there that was the most interesting was on the way in, I was going to punt this little rusty pot, and it was John Novicki who was with us, who goes, "Oh, that's a French mess tin from Howie Ravine where the Cuirassiers fought. Take it with you." And it's broken away in one spot, and then it was Andy on the way out of the ravine goes, "Hey, I found a lid to your mess tin," and it's become an amazing teaching piece because the lid is damaged in the same spot that the actual mess tin's damaged. And I don't know, how far did we hike in Howie Ravine?
Oh, probably a good 2 kilometers, so 1.2 miles.
Yeah, so if you figure the base of the mess tin I found going into the ravine, and the lid we found leaving the ravine a mile later. It's a great teaching piece for handing around to the kids like pieces of a shell that we found in Howie Ravine, and then just explaining how we found this piece and going, what happened to this guy? And the amount of kids who have been impacted by that since we came out of there.
Yeah. No, that was definitely a good story from that 2005 tour.
Oh my God, yeah.
So I met Christine. I joined the Western Front Association after my 1986 tour, and got to know some people. Like I said, Christina Holstein, and she turned me on to this group called the German Remembrance Committee of the Argonne Forest in 1994, and I took my first battle. I took a battlefield tour with them, and they do work weekends. They explore the tunnels underground, the World War I combat tunnels, where the mining war in the Argonne Forest, where both sides would try to mine under the other side, blow it up, pack it with explosives, blow it up to knock out the enemy in order to gain territory and advance. And so that started really at 94. Pretty much after that, I went to the battlefields almost annually. And one of the benefits of being in the Western Front Association and being a member of this Deutsches Erinnerungskomitee Gonnerwald was I got to know a lot of Europeans.
Yeah.
And that really helped me build up a good contact base and a knowledge base in that region.
So when were you specifically just visiting that same spot over and over again, or were you just expanding your travels?
What I would usually do is I would at least spend some part of a trip in the Meuse-Argonne. That to me is the most interesting battle from World War I because it's the largest American battle and longest American battle of World War I. And it's also where they fought the Germans, the hardest fought battle between the Americans and the Germans.
And what was that in the place that you're talking about going to a lot, where they'd been digging the tunnels? You took us there, didn't you?
Vauquois.
Yeah, Vauquois. And that was, how deep is that pit from where they blew up the town?
I think the top layer, I think the town actually is 30 meters. The hill lost 30 meters. So Vauquois was a hill, was a town situated on top of a hill. And you can type in, there's a French association also called Les Amis de Vauquois. You can type in Vauquois and you can see pictures of this hill. Essentially, the Germans and the French, because it was so good, because it was such a key observation part for both sides, they tried to throw each other off the hill, and there were over 500 individual explosions on that hill.
Oh my God!
As they tried to do that.
I remember standing up on the edge and looking way down, and there was a deer way down in the bottom that just barely looked like a sugar ant, basically.
Yeah.
That's the only perspective I can give on how deep that was.
And like I say, I want to say, remembering the pictures on the information panels, the hill lost about 30 meters of elevation. The Meuse Argonne is my first love, but I've been to most of the Western Front, with the exception of probably the Vosges Mountain area. That's one area I haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah.
And it's just unbelievable the stories that you can tell. And what makes World War I a little different from World War II is the Western Front really didn't change significantly for most of the war. So you have a much greater chance of remains, having visible remains that you can still visit today.
And this prompts another question that pops in my head that was not prepared. I never got to meet any World War I veterans. Did you have experiences with World War I veterans that led you that furthered your interest?
I did a little bit.
I mean, we were really on the tail end of them. But.
Yeah, in 1993, for instance, Stephen Skinner and his mother and my father and I did a battlefield tour. And Stephen has written a book on Frank Luke, who was a World War I aviator that was killed in the early part of the Meuse Argonne. And when we were over in Ypres, Belgium, we saw several World War I veterans. We didn't have much of a chance to talk to them. At Cantigny, at the 1st Division Memorial Museum in Chicago, Illinois.
It's an
Wheaton,
amazing
Illinois.
museum.
I had a chance. They had in 93, they had a get together, and there were probably, I want to say 25 to 50 veterans there.
Wow.
And so that was really neat. So that helped a little bit. The other thing was at that time, when I first started, I was really into aviation. And the League of World War I Aero Historians publishes, and they had a lot of, in their journals, they have a lot of narrations or first-person accounts.
And how did you? So you started traveling over there. How did you get into the reenacting aspect of this?
So on my second battlefield tour, which was 1990, 1986 being the first one, I put an ad in the. At that time, I don't remember if it was Cross and Cockade or the League of World War I Aero Historians by that time, but looking for people to go with. On a tour, and there were two people that replied. One was Stephen Miller, an American who had worked overseas with the NSA and the U.S. Air Force, and the other one was Sue Fisher, and her husband Steve was head of the Infantry Regiment Number 111, and so I got to know Sue, and through that I got to know Steve and got into reenacting in '92.
Okay, cool. Where was that? Was that at the old Shemstown?
The last event I went to as an observer was the old Shemstown.
Okay.
And then it was the wandering in the wilderness, so to speak, until we got the site of Neuville.
When did you decide that you were going to start leading battlefield tours? When did you start having an idea that this is something that I want to do?
Always had it a little bit for a passion. In '98, I worked with Flanders Tours, just marketing to the Western Front Association USA branch. We marketed a tour. And then 2005, we did the little one here for the 8th Cuirassiers.
Yeah.
In 2007, I did another one for the Western Front Association United States branch. And then it really was getting close to 2014 with the centennial. So what's now the Doughboy Foundation, I forget what the name of it was at that time, but they held a meeting in D.C. in 2014 to kind of get all of the World War I interested people together on one page to work on what do we do for the commemoration.
Okay.
And that started it. And that also convinced me to start up my MeuseArgonne.com website. So after that, then in 2017, I started making plans because America joined the war on April 6, 1917. So I started making plans to leave my corporate job and be a battlefield tour guide in 2017.
I remember at one point you talking about you had this general plan of do certain things so that at a certain point you could leave corporate, and then build up this business.
Yeah, and part of it was I got tutored for 15 months in French twice a week for 1 hour each time, just to get my French up to speed, and also had to look into visas and housing and things like that.
So what languages do you speak at this point?
Fluent in German, and I'm somewhat proficient in French.
Oh, wow.
I won't say I'm fluent in French, not by any means.
All I can say in French is je ne parle pas français, which when your family is from Montreal and you say that multiple times, you get laughed at a lot.
True.
So when did you leave corporate again?
So in March of 2017, I left.
Okay.
And on May 15th, I went over and lived in France for 6 months that year. Got a visa that allowed me to work in France, and lived in France for 6 months as a freelance guide.
So during those 6 months, just what are some stories you want to share from that 6 months over there? I mean, that's a rather amazing immersive experience.
It was great. The one story I would say is most of my clients at that time, they found me through my museargon.com website. Most of them had a relative that fought in the war that they in whose footsteps they wanted to follow. So that was really neat and very meaningful. I enjoy taking people back and bringing the battlefields back to life. And this leads to why I named my new company Knee Deep into History, and we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But the ability to hit things in depth and to really get out into the country and drive on the gravel forestry roads and find things was really great. And that definitely influenced me. There's all sorts of levels of battlefield tours. And one that I'm not particularly favorite of, but I know some people it's a legitimate thing and it ticks the box for them, is the day trippers that come out of Paris. And they drive out for a couple hours, see a few of the key sites, the cemetery, the monument. And this could be for Normandy, this could be for the Meuse Argonne. They see a few of the key sites, and then they get back in the van and drive back into Paris in time for dinner. And that just was never the style of tour that I liked. So that's, like I say, that's partially why I've called the company Knee Deep into History, and why I like doing a tour for someone who's got a much bigger interest in visiting the battlefields and history.
And so how long are the typical tours?
We have a variety of different things. Our standard tours are typically 5 to 7 days. And we're pretty much in the field from 9 to 5 during the day. And then you've got a couple hours of peace back at the hotel before dinner. But we can also, I can do, and there are people that hire me that want to hire me for 1 day or 2 days just to go research where their family member fell or where their family member served. And then we also do tours for associations. So like coming up, I'm actually, in a few weeks, I'll be leading a tour for the 65th Infantry Division Association.
Oh, wow.
And that's basically 2 weeks. And we start out at Le Havre, France, and go all the way down to Inns, Austria, right along the German-Austrian border.
Something I remember from our tour in 2005 was how we were staying at small hotels and everything like that. What was that? What was that hotel? That family hotel we stayed at near Verdun?
Hotel de Commerce in Oberville, and they retired.
No.
Yeah. Patricia and Laurent are in retirement. They retired a year or so ago. They're working on selling the hotel, so
Okay.
Hopefully it will be repurchased. Hopefully it will be sold, and someone else will restart it. But I saw them in March when I was over for a work weekend, a 2-day work weekend, and a 7-day recon for the 65th Infantry Division tour.
And when we stayed there in 1995, how long had you been staying with them at that point?
I started in 97.
And that was, so we were there 2005. Okay. Because I remember you talking about the building of the relationships, not only with the people you met on the battlefields, but with like the family with the hotel, and how they treated us as a result of that. I mean, 2 examples would be when my first wife became ill, and we're talking about taking her to the hospital. And I remember you went down and told, what was her name again?
Patricia,
what was going on, and then she insisted on calling the village doctor out. and then he gives a prescription, and then she insists on sending, was it her son, to the neighboring village for their pharmacy?
Yeah. So there's one in each region. There's a pharmacy has to stay open for extra hours if as a need
Okay.
be. So it's on a rotating basis. And so he and I drove to that pharmacy to pick up the prescription, even though it was after hours.
And then they just nursed. They just nursed her the whole following day while we were off doing other things.
Yeah, the minute she started taking the pills, it was fine. I mean, I was really afraid, not having used the French health system at all. I was thinking of the American system where we're going to go to Verdun, and we're going to be staying 6 hours in the emergency room, and then we're going to come out with a $10,000 bill.
Yeah.
And I think the doctor's charge was something like €30 for a Friday night visit.
Which I paid him in cash, and he stared at me a little bit confused, and
Yeah.
because I don't know their system. I just know there was a bill, and so I just handed it to him.
And then getting the drugs that night, and boom, she was, by the next day, she was starting to feel better. So one of the things, we've touched on this a little bit on the tour philosophy. Like I said, getting clients into the field, having that ability to explore and not just visiting museums and memorials, but trying to find real sites. It's a little tougher in World War II because there's less. The war was much more a war of movement, but it's still possible. Guiding small groups, attempting to tell a balanced view of both sides of the story, and we'll go into that a little bit more. But designing a tour for those seriously interested in history, and then introducing clients to the local culture. And this is the point that Merlin is talking on. And we really don't like to design tours where you stay in American-style hotels in the big cities. And that's it. And we could go to lunch at McDonald's.
No.
And, to save time, we really don't like doing that. So what we typically do for lunch, for instance, is we'll go to a local bakery and we'll get sandwiches and usually sandwiches, desserts, and beverages. And we'll eat lunch in the field. Because if you go to a restaurant in France, you can't get out of there in less than an hour, and probably more like an hour and a half.
And I remember all the different places you took us, and just the absolutely amazing foods.
On the Ardennes tour that we did this last December, we had someone that wasn't sure if they were concerned about what is it with bread? Gluten. Yeah, the gluten.
You. Sorry.
And they wanted gluten free, and we said, well, we didn't have that at the local bakery, but the flour it's a different flour, and it's also processed differently. I think it's ground or milled less than it is in the United States. And so they ate that bread, they ate on a beautiful French baguette, and they never had a problem at all with their stomach.
I heard that, this is just a total digression for a second, but I heard that about a family that moved down to South America, and they had gluten issues, and the children had different allergies, and just because of how the food is different, and also the shopping differently too, of having to go to a local market and pick up stuff fresh. The mother was saying after about a year, most of their food issues had gone away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's I would believe that. Like I said, having this person that had the gluten issue.
That's really
but
interesting.
never had an issue eating the baguettes that we would order from the local bakery.
Wow, that's really interesting.
So let's see. We were talking about 2017.
Yeah.
And my wife, I have to say, this has to be a shout out to my wife, Lori. She was extremely understanding and letting me go to France to live for 6 months as a freelance tour guide.
That's amazing.
We would talk on Skype pretty much every night. But we still, and she came over for 2 weeks during the middle of it. But, it was still quite a sacrifice. And then in 2018, I did another 2 months. She didn't want me to do a full 6 months. So that 2017 to 2018, I did a total of 8 months.
Oh, wow.
And that really got me hooked on wanting to be a tour guide. In 2019, I actually submitted an application with the American Battle Monuments Commission to be a superintendent. I don't know if you knew that. You probably did.
No, I didn't know that. Is that a group that they control the monuments, or do they? What's the background there?
So it's a U.S. government commission, and they are the ones that administer the overseas memorials and cemeteries.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I would, had I gotten the position, I would have been working as a superintendent or assistant superintendent at one of the cemeteries overseas.
Oh wow.
Now, I didn't get it, and the biggest strike against me was I didn't have any military or government work experience, and that's the people that get the jobs.
What did Lori think of this?
At that point, she would have gone with it. The position came up again, but I didn't. A little while ago, I didn't apply.
Yeah.
But again, because I didn't think I had the chance. But she would have. At that point, she would have gone with it. But we were a few years younger then.
Yeah.
That was 2019. Fast forward, get through COVID, and 2021, I started knee deep into history. So we've just finished our fourth season, 2021, 22, 23, 24, and we're into our fifth season.
How many tours have you done a year have you done per season?
So 2021, we only did 2, and that was the Meuse Argonne Saint-Mihiel tour and the Ardennes Battle of the Bulge tour.
Okay.
This last year we did, 2024, we did 8, and it was various tours of various sizes, some smaller, some larger. In an ideal world, I would love to get this business up to the point where I'm doing about 8 to 10 tours a year.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But 2025, I would say, is coming in a little bit weak. I don't know if it's the all of the political stuff. The other thing is the round years, I guess you'd say, for centennials or centennial or 80th anniversaries and stuff are always key years. So last year you had the 80th anniversary of Normandy and the Battle of the Bulge.
And then we've got VE Day this year.
Yeah. But for Americans, VE Day is generally a little bit lesser known.
Yeah.
The big battles that the Americans know from World War II, Western Front were Normandy, the initial landing, and then the Bulge.
Now, how do you find? 2018 we had the 100th anniversary of World War One. I guess anniversaries just don't really don't affect that interested community that much.
No, it did. 2017 and 2018, you saw a lot of people go over.
Okay.
So, for instance, I do a lot of my tours with a German business partner, and he's a retired Bundeswehr officer. His name is Markus Klauer. And in 2018, we did a 6-day tour, where we focus each day on a different Army Corps, 4 days for the Meuse Argonne and 2 days in Saint-Mihiel. And you could join for the whole thing, or you could join for just a specific corps if you were interested in following one division, for example. And that worked out really well. And in between that, we saddled it in with a weekend where we had a meet and greet dinner at the Hôtel de Commerce in Oberville.
Oh, wow.
So that was really neat. And then last year for the 80th anniversary, and that was the 100th anniversary of the Meuse Argonne and Saint-Mihiel offensives. For the 80th anniversary last year, we had 13 participants in our Battle of the Bulge tour.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and 4 of those, out of the 13 participants, there were family members representing 4 different soldiers. One was a combat engineer, one was in the 17th Airborne, one was in the 106th Infantry Regiment or Division, and one was one was a military policeman. And we were able to work in, to some degree, visiting sites that were key to all 4 of those.
Oh, that's very cool. So do you see yourself down there doing sort of more of an even split between World War I and World War II, or just sort of playing it by ear?
Yeah, playing it by ear. So we kind of do 3 different types of tours. We have our standard tours. So for World War I, our standard tours are the Meuse Argonne and Saint-Mihiel, Verdun, and Flanders Field and the Somme. Verdun in part because Markus Klauer has done a lot of work with the French associations around Verdun, and he's very well known in that area. Also, what most Americans don't realize is the Meuse Argonne battlefield was and the Verdun battlefield overlap significantly. And then for World War II, our standard ones were Normandy and the Battle of the Bulge.
Okay.
We've added in a Hurtgen Forest and Market Garden tour.
Oh, cool. I'd
Yeah,
love to
we
do
haven't
Market
so
Garden.
far we haven't led that. So these are kind of our standard tours that we offer, and you can find them on the website. We also then people can hire Marcus or I or another tour that we did World War II tour last year was Third Reich Underground, where my son Graham led, and that was in Thuringia, Germany, and there we looked at concentration camps and the German efforts to move their manufacturing underground to avoid Allied bombardment. So the interplay between the concentration camps and the wartime production, that was the main goal of dispersing the armament production.
This really ties neatly into, because I've seen Graham's pictures and heard him talk about his hobby, which is, it's almost like Urbex underground over there.
Yes. And I won't say that he got that from his old man, but Graham is my son. When he was 8 years old, he went to the Argonne Forest with me for the first time with a work weekend with the German Remembrance Committee of the Argonne Forest, and he was too young to go underground.
Oh.
But he would stay on top, running around in the Argonne Forest, avoiding unexploded shells and things like that, while I was underground doing work weekend with my German and European friends. But to get back to, so we do our regular tours. Then you can hire us for private tours to go follow research, normally it's following a family member or a specific division. And then we also will organize tours for larger groups. 2023, a man named John Decker hired us, and we took 12 members of his family over.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And we spent 3 days on the Meuse Argonne and other World War I battlefields, because his great uncle was in the 3rd Division in World War I and was killed on the Meuse Argonne right along the Hindenburg Line.
Oh, wow.
And then we spent 3 days following his father's footsteps, who was in the 87th Division. And we went through we looked at the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge, and went to the crossings where they crossed the Mosel River and the Rhine River crossing. And so that was really neat. And the family loved it. It was a great experience. But to bring several generations together, because it was, there were 4 or 5 brothers, I think 4 brothers, and there was a spouse or 2, and then there were grandkids. And so it was really a multi-generational tour, but it worked out wonderfully.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that was neat. So that kind of gives you an idea of, the 3 different types of tours that we can do. And, if you're just interested in visiting the battlefields of World War I and World War II, I would say look at our core tours on our website, and that's kneedeepintohistory.com. If you are looking to get into more detail or see something in a greater detail where a relative fought, then we do a private tour oftentimes. And if you happen to be with an association like First Canberra, no.
Yeah.
if you happen to be with an association that has a bigger interest, we can definitely work with you to organize and to plan a tour.
And there's do you mind if I throw in a couple other things that have popped in mind?
No, go right ahead.
I'm trying to there's some other things that I remember from our 2005 tour that pop in again on the relationships with people over there. Who was the fellow who ran that museum that's all found objects? Would you be able to talk about him for a minute, because he's really interesting.
Jean-Paul de Vries.
Yes, he was really neat.
And he's still there, still going strong. Still has his museum open.
I think I found a website for it a little while back.
Yeah, Romagna 14.
Yes, yeah.
Romagne, Romagna 14-18 is his museum.
And how did you meet him?
So I met him through Christina Holstein.
Okay.
Another introduction from Christina. We did our tour, the 8th Cuirassier tour, in 2005.
Yeah.
In 2004, I went over to do a recon to plan for that. Well, Christina said, "Have you ever met Jean-Paul?" And I said, "No." Well, at that time, he had a different museum. He was located on the other side of Romagna. And he was just shutting that museum down in November of 2004 when I was doing that recon tour. And so that's the first time I met him. And then when we went, we obviously went to his new museum in 2005.
Which is one of those sort of French combination farmhouse barn type things.
Yeah, a very large barn.
And can you talk about how he gets this stuff?
So he, I don't even know if I still have the CD-ROM where we did a recording of this, but
Oh, really?
one of the areas is he would look for the German camps. You can find, in maps, find out where the German encampments were. And one of the ways he does this is digging up the garbage pits. And the way he described it to me back in 2004 was that the Germans would, each camp area, they systematically dug garbage pits, and they were 2 meters deep, 2 meters long, and 1 meter wide.
Okay.
And if you can find those, and he would use a diamond tip probe, then you can open those up and do this. Now, you're not supposed to use metal detectors on the battlefields, but if you are on private property and you have the permission of the owner, you can look for that type of stuff. And that was one of the ways that he got a lot of things.
I seem to remember him talking about, or somebody talking about him walking like the streams in the area too.
Yeah, yep. He'll walk the streams. He'll also go out and walk the fields oftentimes right after the harvest or right after the plowing.
Oh, that
because
makes sense.
That's when things get brought up to the surface. Not talking about Jean-Paul, but there's one of our a guy named Matt Treaster who has been on 2 tours with us, bringing each of his sons on different tours. But we were out in this area near this little town called Sharpentry, and he was very interested. He had a relative that was in the 35th Infantry Division, or 35th Division. And anyways, I just walked out I saw something shiny 15 feet into the field and walked in, and it was the top of a mess kit.
Oh, wow.
And from a soldier in that division. And it was just, one of those pure luck.
Yeah.
But I'm not that lucky, but it was just really neat that we were able to find that, and he could take that home.
And that actually ties into something we were talking about over before we started this earlier, which was it almost makes this whole thing into a loop, because we were talking at the beginning about going into Heli Ravine, and so I have a box of the rusty bits that we pulled from Heli Ravine, and some items that you've given me too, like barbed wire that you'd found places that I teach my students with. And another thing in that box is a envelope given to us by it was a German soldier in the was it
retired soldier?
A retired German soldier in this cemetery. Do you want to tell us about that cemetery?
Sure. So that's the Deutscher Soldatenfriedhof Neuer Pont Maugis, the German soldier cemetery at Neuer Noyers Pont Pont Maugis Maugis.
There'll be a quiz on this later, listeners. We will call your parents if you don't get this right.
Yes. But it's a large German cemetery, and I selected it for that tour. So one of the things I will say, one of the things that's fun about this business is the research that goes into things. And for that tour, I was working with the German, the regimental history for the 8th Cuirassiers, and trying to find other things. So we had a list from the regimental history. I started trying to research where the fallen Cuirassiers were. Now, because we were cavalry, there aren't that many fallen soldiers. And I came across this at Neuer Pont Maugis. There were 4 Cuirassier soldiers buried there. And this was from the march into Belgium in September of 1914. And that's why we went to visit that cemetery. It's also a fairly large one. It has both German World War I graves and World War II graves. And just outside of it, there's a French cemetery, and it overlooks Sedan. I'll do the English pronunciation. It overlooks Sedan, which was key for the 1870-71, the Franco-Prussian War as well. So it's a cool cemetery. It's steeped in so many ways in so many different battlefields. The World War II graves are mostly from the May-June, where the Germans were invading and fighting, meeting French resistance, pretty heavy French resistance for about 6 weeks in 1940. That's one of two German cemeteries in France that had an administrator, a German administrator, and this Gerhard Henschke was there. He was that administrator, and he was a retired German officer, and it was just a treat to talk to him.
He was. We went up and our friend John Novicki, who is now the rector at my church, he did a service at the chapel there, didn't he?
He did. They had a chapel, and they allowed us to. We got permission to do a short service to remember the cuirassiers.
And then there was, and he was Gerhard was so excited for our interest. He was talking about the soldiers there still digging up regularly, and so one of the things I got there was he gave us an envelope with items that had been found in the past couple years. Things from a Russian belt buckle, because there was a small amount of Russians on the Western Front, to some buttons, to half of a dog tag, and this one blew my mind, to a postcard that looked like it had been from 1917, that looked like it had been mailed yesterday, that had been found in some guy's pocket. And then I think we'll throw it. Do you want to tell that last whole story about the
cemetery? The spouse.
Yeah, because I went down. There was a grave of the unknown, and I decided I smoke a pipe. So I decided I was going to go down and have a smoke with the boys and sprinkle some tobacco on their grave. When I went down there to do that, it was Gerhard. He expressed that he liked seeing people spend times with the boys. That leads into this story that Randy learned.
So I'll preface this by saying, as a battlefield tour guide, a significant portion of our tours is spent visiting the cemeteries and knowing some of the individual stories and things like that. Every now and then you get one of those stories that just hits you, and this was that story. He told a story of a woman who would come and visit her World War II veteran, the grave of her World War II veteran, every year on his birthday, and she would celebrate his birthday by having a picnic at the graveside, which, again, back then was probably fairly popular. It certainly was in Victorian era. And one year she finally came and said this is going to be my last. She told him, this is going to be my last visit. I'm just too old. I can't do this anymore. And, that just, like I say, that just hit me, that the love that she had with her husband, to spend, to come over every year until she basically was in such failing health she couldn't do it anymore. Yeah. So I think that left all of us with kind of a lump in the throat.
Absolutely. Mr. Moore, that you want to talk about with the tours, or
maybe just a little bit?
Yeah, go for it. Absolutely, please.
So I pulled something out from the history here. What it says is, I traveled on a tour Randy organized for a group of us in 2005. On this journey, we followed a World War I cavalry unit, the 8th Cuirassier. Randy took us from Cologne, Germany, where they originated, to Helle Ravine, Verdun, where they fought the battle for Fort Duomo. Along the way, we stayed in small local hotels, saw places significant to the Cuirassier, met with veterans who maintained a museum of the 8th Cuirassiers, and saw such amazing places as the Romagna 14-18 Museum. Look it up. It's a special place. And we just talked about that.
Yeah.
Randy has a passion for World War I, and his extensive time in Europe has built him an extensive knowledge not only of the history of the area, but a connection with many local people. We were immersed in the history we explored. A trip with Randy is a well-rounded experience that I doubt you will find anywhere else. This was written by Eric Merlin Hansen of the 8th Cuirassier Regiment, and this was one of the things that I used in 2017 when I was advertising for my tours.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
I thought you would appreciate that.
I'm sitting there going, I think I might have written this, but I've written so many things I've forgotten. But and then it's hitting. As soon as you mentioned the museum, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure I wrote this because I think I remember looking up the museum trying to get that right.
Yep. The other two things I would mention, I will say the battlefields speak to me, as to why I'm interested in this, and it's hard for me to describe it better. But I found Major Nigel Price of the 7th Duke of Edinburgh's own Gurkha rifles. He was a Falklands veteran.
Oh, wow.
And he put it this way, way more eloquent than I can say it, so I'm going to give him the credit. There is something sacred about a battlefield. Often it is a place where history has changed course, like a point on a long march where a compass needle is consulted and a new bearing set. But greater than historical significance is the human element. It is the place where men have died, for it has been mostly men, usually en masse and in the prime of their youth and strength. Soldiers don't fight for history, rarely even for country, and certainly not for governments. They fight because their regiment places them in harm's way, and their regiment is family. They fight for their mates. In the last stand, they fight for their lives. It is the individual stories of courage and struggle that touch us and sanctify the spot. A battlefield is sacred because at some point in time and space where soldiers confronted the most intimate of both demons and angels, it is a place where, however frightened, they mustered all that they were and faced death. And I think that really puts it into, why, as I say, to me, battlefields speak. They speak to me, and that's why I love being on them. I love studying them, researching the history, and telling the stories to people that are willing to listen. And let me do one more thing.
Go for it,
I've got a Venn diagram here that I showed Merlin that most people don't see these anymore.
We will put that up on the Instagram.
But part of what got me into all of this, I studied German and business in undergraduate, and then I had the scholarship to study at the University of Hamburg for a year. To have a really fulfilling tour, you kind of need to understand the history and the events. You also need to understand the region and the geography and the culture and the language. And all of that goes in also with the context. And I think the reason why I decided after doing 2017 and 18 as a trial run, the reason why I decided to start knee deep into history is I've got the skills and the experience and years of experience of doing this, of bringing all of those things into play to really provide a great experience for someone that wants to go and visit the battlefields. And I've partnered with Marcus Klauer, who does the same thing and has been doing the same thing for as long as I have. We've known each other for 30 years. And Graham Gaulke, my son, has gotten very knowledgeable on World War II, in part because he's lived in the Netherlands and Europe for several years. So that's my advertisement. I hate to do that.
Don't hate that. That's fantastic. That's totally fine.
Kneedeepintohistory.com. If you're a serious history buff and you want to really see and understand the battlefields, I would encourage you to look at kneedeepintohistory.com and contact us.
Okay, so that's going to be, so first off, as always, I want to say thank you for listening. There are other things you could be doing, like watching grass grow or paint dry or playing with a yo-yo. I mean, there's all sorts of options out there. One neat thing I want to say about this episode is every episode we implore our listeners at the end to send us stories, tell us about their detours, tell us about the characters that they've met. And this episode came about where Randy was listening to another episode and then drops me a note going, "Hey, have you thought about covering battlefield tours?" And I've literally let out a shout when that message came in because I'm like, this is exactly what we want to happen. We want people to listen and go, "Hey, I've got this story, I've got this thing that I do, or I've got, I ran into this," and go, "Do you want to cover this?" And as you've just seen from this episode, the answer is a resounding yes. And so I want to say thank you very much, Randy, for taking your time for coming in.
And thank you, Merlin, for not only for hosting this, but for going with me on 2005, which was really my first big tour.
That was an amazing experience. So, as always, thank you so much for listening, and good evening, good morning, good night, whenever it is, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.